Just 1 year ago, and a few months earlier than expected, Brenda Cassellius was stepping into her new role as superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools. And that year, as they say, has been a year with continuing financial issues that plagued the district before her arrival, a lead paint contamination issue at dozens of schools, and chronic low achievement scores for students. What's the superintendent's view of her first year, and how does the year ahead look as the district prepares to release its new budget? Let's find out from MPS Superintendent Dr. Brenda Cassellius. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Great. See you again, Denise.
Well, you knew there were significant challenges when you were appointed. Were there things you did not expect or not know about? And how did those things shape your focus for your first year as superintendent?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And it has been quite a challenge. I think the severity of the issues was what was surprising most to me, and the systemic nature of the lack of controls within the district has also been something that has been very surprising to me. And so restoring that control environment has been really one that's been challenging. And of course, we had also the vacancy problem in our district, which was at a crisis level as well. So, the governor did his audits, both the academic audit and the operational audit, and I also issued an HR audit. All of those found that at the district office, we were overstaffed compared to how we were staffing our schools. So the rebalancing of that became a huge priority for me. And obviously, I knew that there was some inkling when I first started about this lead issue, but I didn't know that it was profound in all of our schools. And as I started to get underneath that, I began to understand better the maintenance and the facilities and the condition of our schools. The average age of school is 85 years. The average age nationally is about 45 years. So obviously that is also a really big issue for the district in terms of not only correcting the issue immediately so that our children could go to safe schools, it was also to ensure that it doesn't happen again. This is true of the financial issues that were going on with the district as well. Some of that was about personnel turnover. Some of that is about lack of controls and just 3 years of not doing audits. And so being behind in those audits really strapped us from knowing exactly where the money was, line item by line item, which is why this year when we got our final audit done, we saw full sight of our finances and were able then to take the time that we needed to start earlier in the budget process to work with schools individually, one by one, with their assigned budget analysts to see where the overspending was occurring, to institute a class size reduction plan across all schools so that we no longer had have and have nots within the district and could put in place new controls for the spending. That took more time than was comfortable for most people, to have your budgets inspected, to be able to look and defend all of your expenses within the schools and within our departments has been a change for people. And of course, change is hard, but it was something that was necessary and something that I believed our community, our public, and our board was demanding of us.
So you really, for this first year that you've been here, you have really been running two parallel tracks. One, trying to understand the depth of the issues and the problems, while at the other time, trying to also put together programs and opportunities to address some of the issues that you knew existed.
Absolutely. I mean, our academic plan, for one, was, a hard start because we didn't have the proper curriculum. I didn't even know that our curriculum wasn't aligned to science of reading because we had 2 years in which to align it and we hadn't done it. I found that out late in the game, and so we had to shift gears mid-cycle. There are things that I'm still finding out, and I've been here a year. Because the district culture is one that we are still working on, where there's fear to bring things up and that sort of thing. And so I want to just make sure that all of our employees know that you can bring things up There's no retaliation that's going to happen. There's no blame that's going to happen. We're all in this together, and we are on a continuous improvement, type of culture that we want to be. So if there's things we find now, we just fix them. There's no blame. We need to move forward and continue to get better each and every day, because our students need us to be efficient in the way that we spend money, the way that we do our work. We need to have good workflows between our employees so that they know from department to department what the right and left hand is doing, and we're not stepping on each other's toes, and that we are actually working in tandem together on the betterment of the education for all of our children.
How do you begin to implement that culture change? How do you begin to make that shift?
Well, the first is to build a strong team at the top, and then to demand that we hold ourselves accountable in how we respond to our employees, how we have an open door policy. Just about everybody in the district has my phone number and they're using it, and obviously my email, and I respond. When you are responsive and you are consistent, and you demonstrate yourself, the culture that you want in the school district, then I think eventually you get there. Are we there yet? No. This is a very hard time for the district, and there is still people who are losing their jobs. As you know, we had to cut 264 positions. That's about 201 real employees who are valued, dedicated MPS employees. We think we'll be able to find a position for most of them, but it won't be the same position. They may not be in the same school where they felt like a family member at that school and they had a sense of community and belongingness. This is very disruptive and challenging to our schools, our district, and also can be upsetting to others. And so that hurts our culture. So we have to get through this really difficult adjustment period that we're in, to reestablish the expectations and the ways that we work together, and then move forward. But I can tell you, I have treated people with kindness. I have tried to be transparent, even with the hard information, because I know just from my own personal experience, and my professional experience, that when people are communicated with consistently and honestly, they can accept that reality. They may not like it, but when you do that, then people at least understand and can move forward.
You said before something I think everybody would agree with, and that is that change is hard. As you begin to implement that change and look towards some of those changes in the next budget year, how are you working with people to talk about perhaps a different kind of focus than you had that first year, right? First year was we got stuff we got to take care of right away. Do you see the second year as an opportunity for a building year, both in terms of building relationships and beginning to really build and push out some of the programs, for example, around class size and the new reading curriculum?
Well, first of all, it requires a lot of splaining to do. So it requires a lot of communication. I have a wonderful new chief of communications who was here before, Tony Tagliavia, and he has a great team working with him to get all of those communications out. We've been very intentional to communicate, to combat any misinformation that's out there so that our employees know, as well as our external community understands and knows the work that we're engaged in. And absolutely, the second piece is just showing up. We've had listening sessions, multiple listening sessions with the community in which I used to do the budget recommendations. I had employee groups that I met with the MTEA, who were impacted, and I took some of their recommendations, and I listened to our teachers showing up in their classrooms, walking their buildings. I think I've been in about 90 buildings so far. Not all of them, trying to get to all of them by the end of the year, but certainly we'll continue to visit schools, talk to real teachers on the ground, talk to principals constantly. We had a lot of principal engagement the past 2 months in this budget. Certainly they're not all happy. I'm not going to say that, everybody's happy with the decisions that I made, but my job is not necessarily to make everybody happy. It's to be responsible with our budget, to prepare a balanced budget as required by state law, and to put students first in that budget. And that's what I've attempted to do, as well as some of our lowest paid workers.
One of the challenges that's in your budget, and that, in all honesty, has been in a challenge for the budgets of a lot of MPS superintendents, is really deferred maintenance. But you've got a $1 billion deferred maintenance backlog. How do you begin to address that? Because I think we saw with the lead paint issue what happens when that deferred maintenance isn't taken care of. How do you even begin to punch a hole in that figure and help people know and feel that there's not some other issue lurking out there that's going to be problematic for the health of students?
Well, that's a very real risk for the organization. We had about $100 million in that fund. It's called the Fund 46 Construction Fund. It can only be spent on capital improvement projects, roofs, electrical, plumbing, new construction, remodeling, flooring, et cetera, that kind of thing. That is not part of the operational budget, which is different. So that's Fund 10. So people will hear these different types of funds. And then we have another fund called Fund 80, which is the recreation fund, and we can't take money out of there as well. So some of these funds get commingled in what's an overall outlook at the district level. And so it may sit there and in the aggregate look like we have enough money in our budget. But when you pull out the Fund 80 expenses or the Fund 46 expenses, that's where you see the deficit. And that's why it's so important to get your budgeting right. So when I talk about the $46 million short, that's in our operating budget, not
Right.
our Fund 46 budget, which is the construction budget. You bring up a really important point, though, is that we spent so much of that $43 million on lead that really took a hit on that Fund 46. If in fact we had further expenses, and we've seen big expenses this year with floods, we had additional flooding, we've had some electrical problems, some roofs that need to be replaced. That's very expensive and into the millions of dollars to do. And so we have about $25 million left in that. When we anticipate spending about $5 million on that each year on those types of deferred maintenance costs, because the money's just not in there to do everything that we need to do. So we really are only working with the emergency pieces that we need to do, and that's about $5 million we anticipate each year. If in fact we spend the entire 25 over the next 5 years and we don't have a way to replenish that budget, then it will go into the Fund 10 expense and start taking away from the operating expenses that are used to move student achievement, to pay for salaries, books, etc. And so that's where the risk is, and why when people ask me, do you think you're going to be going out for referenda again? I'm absolutely saying yes, but we have a lot more to do to win that vote and to win the confidence of the public by demonstrating our fiscal prudence and that we have our district budget in order.
One thing some people have suggested is that one way that MPS could begin to control some of those expenses is to get rid of schools that may be only at 50%, 60% student capacity. And if MPS would not have all of the facilities it has, it would be easier to put some of that money either into taking care of the maintenance issues or back into student achievement. What are your thoughts on that? Because we have talked in previous interviews about the idea of closing schools.
It's one of the hardest decisions that a board has to make, to close a school, because the community is so um, um, fond of their community schools. And, there's just a lot of history there, a lot of feelings that people have about their schools. And so I recognize and acknowledge the really challenges that come with having to make that hard vote to close schools, there are actually real savings to closing schools, anywhere from $1 to $3 million in operating expenses. But to get back to your previous question about deferred maintenance, that's where the real savings is. When you can take these schools offline, you don't have to pay for those roofs and the boilers and the ongoing maintenance of those school buildings each and every year. The second win for us is when we actually get to maximize the efficiencies of having larger schools so that we can provide full-time art, music, PE, and other specialty and other support systems to a school. And we don't have to pay for two principals or two sets of counselors and two sets of social workers and all that administrative overhead at that school site. And we can maximize the classrooms and the class sizes, so we're not sitting at 10 kids in a class and having to overstaff a school because you can't provide a quality education to children in a school that has less than 350 kids. It's just really hard to staff those schools. And we've found that schools that have lower utilization rates or smaller enrollments have part-time positions for art, maybe a 0.2 position of art rather than a full-time position. And there's very few teachers who want to take a position where they don't get a full-time job.
Dr. Cassellius, you have a lot that is going on, and we appreciate the time that you took with us here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise.
We'll be right back.